Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode. My guest this week is Beverley Densham, a mindfulness Pilates teacher who's been teaching Pilates for now over 25 years. As a result, she was one of the first in the UK to start teaching Pilates, having seen the benefits for herself when she was travelling over in Australia. As a result, she built up a very successful business, Pilates business and studio in Hertfordshire before moving to Dorset. She is also a best-selling author of her book, I Talk to Angels, and is the founder of the Happy Kids affirmation cards and the Happy and Calm affirmation cards. Her own story and journey is definitely one that you need to hear. It's a very powerful story of experiencing near-death experiences, but also having the courage and strength to step away from an abusive relationship. We cover lots about her story and her journey and what it means to her to actually reflect that and the lessons she learned and how she reflects that in with her clients today. We also talk about meditation, journaling, and her techniques to induce calm and reduce stress. It's a really enjoyable conversation with loads of great content. I really hope you do enjoy this episode. Welcome, Bev, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Warren. I'm really pleased to be here.
Really looking forward to our conversation about all the things that you do, all the things you do, about calmness, reducing stress, the Pilates and all of that wider discussion. But actually, Bev, in yourself, you've had a really interesting and at times challenging journey. So perhaps just for our listeners, if you wouldn't mind, could we just sort of recount a little bit of your story, perhaps, about the significant business that you had grown, which you actually unfortunately lost, and then sort of U-turn, hit rock bottom, and how you came to relocate to lovely sunny Dorset.
Yes, hooray for Dorset. I love Dorset so much. Yeah, so I fell in love with Dorset actually on childhood holidays. We came here every single year. We stayed on a farm, caravanning and camping, and every day we'd go to a beach hut in Mudderford in Dorset, and it was wonderful. So that's how I sort of started off with a love of Dorset, and obviously now this is our 9th year of it being our home, which is wonderful. But the journey that led up to sort of moving here has been up and then down and up and down. I think that's probably describes most people's lives really. But I was blessed and lucky to have a really nice childhood. I was heavily into sport and designing things. Wasn't quite sure what to do, so I ended up doing a degree in sports science at University of Brighton.
Okay.
Ended up with a real passion for learning and research and science, even though I wouldn't really describe myself as a science person, but actually there is that side to me, which I think I'm glad I did do it. Halfway through I was thinking, I think I'll go and do a graphic design. I really wished I'd done graphic design, but when you're 3/4 of the way through something, it's not the most ideal time to change. So I carried on, and I think we always do things for a reason, on our educational or work journeys. After that, I worked for a year, travelled around the world, had a quite an amazing trip working and travelling around the world. And what sort of led me to the Pilates was originally, the first bit of it was I was in Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, and I was suffering from yet more back problems, kind of from overuse in sport. It started early on and sort of in and out the MRI scanner and constantly on and off at the physio, osteopath, chiropractor, every single treatment you can think of. And when I was in Australia, they sort of packed me off to Pilates class. I'd never heard of Pilates, didn't know what on earth it was. It's probably the only form of exercise I'd just never heard of it. It just wasn't in my radar at all. I didn't know what this thing was. But it really did help my back so much. So that was very good. And I think, sort of rehabilitation exercises in physiotherapy are very complementary to the basics of Pilates. They sort of really do go very well together. And I'll never forget those first sort of exercises I was given by the physio there that I actually took note of and really realised that when you have a back that's been damaged quite a few times, in the end, you can't do anything but look after it a lot better.
Yeah, just take care.
You can't just be grueling squash, as a squash player, as a runner.
Okay.
800 metres, 1500 metres cross
So
country, heavy squash.
Yeah, kind of and, on your back exercise.
Yeah, and I had this fitness training I used to go to with, his name was Bomber Harris, and it was really tough. I absolutely loved it. But it was like medicine ball, really heavy stuff as a national squash player, and I was like absolutely loving it. But there wasn't really a balance of deep core stability, of being shy, having slightly bad posture actually, and therefore weaker back muscles and all the things that go with that. Carried on travelling. So moving on from Sydney now, the last stop was Cairns in northern Queensland, and at that point I had a very bad road traffic accident. Could have been life-threatening, I think. Fortunately, they really are quite hot on you wearing helmets out there.
Okay.
So I've always cycled a lot, just cycled here to the interview, as you do. And it was a time you would never expect a road traffic accident to happen, because it's early in the morning, very quiet roads, and this car just didn't stop at the crossroads.
Just didn't see you at all. And
smashed into me on my bike. So my helmet and my head smashed the windscreen of the car, my wrist...
Wow.
Was smashed up on the bonnet, and then my back landed on the road. So my wrist was operated on, and it's like one of those life stands still moments, and you're just like lying there. I still remember it quite vividly initially, and then I think maybe I was out of it, and then I came back again, I don't know. Just lying there, trying to breathe and just knowing I had to stay still. Wasn't worried about anything else running me over. I was just lying there. And anyway, it was quite a physical rehabilitation. Had the operation on my wrist with plates and screws and stuff. And
you were a long way from home at this point.
Yeah, very long way from home. So, and also my two best friends that I'd made friends with out there, they'd gone off travelling down the coast, and then we were supposed to do the rest of the east coast of Australia together. So my close friends, not close home friends.
For the travelling kind of friends, yeah.
Yeah, but they were good, made good friends, but they weren't there either. So yeah, it was a long way from home, and I hadn't realised the impact of the mental trauma until I started having panic attacks and post-traumatic stress disorder, which I wasn't so familiar with, and anxiety and depression after it, and chronic fatigue. And so when I just anyway, I won't go on any more about this, but it was quite a pivotal turning point. I managed to get home. I broke down at the airport. And at that point I realised how fragile I was, and
the frailty of life, nearly, I suppose, hits home, doesn't it, in those sorts of situations? Yeah,
it's like you see in the movies, seeing someone like having this breakdown just by the, just like, and that's actually you. That's happening to. And so when I got home, I'd got a lot of help. And I got into the Pilates. I remembered something sparked Pilates in me, and I started going to London, even with a splint on my wrist. I started doing.
How many years ago was this then?
So this was a long time. I'm in my 25th year in business now.
Wow.
I'm in my 25th.
So 25 years ago, Pilates wasn't really heard of, was it?
No.
Did you have to hunt out the classes in the UK at that point?
Well, London, it was prevalent in London, but not in my county. There was none in my county. So I went and learnt it. I was so fascinated by it. Booked in the training, even with a splint on my arm. I couldn't use my arm at the time. And I was determined to train, and I trained, and mentally that did me so much good. And I think it helped physically, mentally so much. I was like, I really want to teach this. And I was very lucky to find premises that I didn't realise it was going to turn into some successful studio. But, it started with one session. But because it wasn't, I was the first teacher in Hertfordshire.
Okay.
The association that I trained with, they kind of handed me a load of people that were interested in...
Within Hertfordshire.
Within Hertfordshire. It's kind of handed a load of clients on a plate, really. So many. And it grew from 1 to 2 to 5 sessions to 10 sessions. And before I knew it...
All within your own studio?
And then I renovated the studio. It's quite a lovely space, and put the mirrors in and decorated. And before I knew it, I had a whole team and full-time admin, and I then expanded into second studio there, big studio, little studio. Then I had all the big equipment and the reform. There's Joseph Pilates, thank you, Joseph Pilates, who created it, It's, his studios were actually he's from Germany, but his studios were in New York with his wife. But it is a pretty fantastic form of exercise, and I wanted to help people like it had helped me, really, particularly with back pain. And it's always been my niche in Pilates is back pain and prolapse discs, all things I've experienced.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I really want to come on and talk about Pilates and bits, but I'm really interested in that bit in your journey, because you'd got into something because I suppose for your own recovery, for your own benefit, you then studied
and a hobby as well.
And a hobby, kind of hobby and an interest, and it's doing good for me. And all of a sudden you find yourself with this kind of quite complex business with people, premises, classes, scheduling.
Yeah.
Did that feel comfortable to you?
Yeah, it just felt completely... I think as it built up from... It just built up.
It didn't happen in an instant. It was organic.
No, it just built up. It did build up quite quickly financially. It was a 6-figure business for 16 years. Yeah. But it was all quite natural to me. But then saying that, doing it on my own was the easiest, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. I quite like having that way of doing things now, and just having a team to support me with my podcast, or in that sort of way. It's very different to running a team.
You just think you're best as a sort of sole entrepreneur, building people around you to support you?
No, I think it's different now. I'm sure over the next the rest of the lifetime I'm sure I will never retire. I'm one of those people. I'm sure it will evolve in different ways, but not in having a studio like that. Okay. More in the stress to calm, working through stress to calm work. Then I'm sure that will expand in loads of wonderful ways over the next however many years. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll cover that during the course of our conversation too. So you had the studio, successful, built the business, as you now say, over 16 years. What brought the business to an end? What brought the business for you to move down from Hertfordshire to Dorset?
It was my choice. My choice. I do have regrets. People say, well, you mustn't have regrets. Well, I do, actually. And I think some people don't admit them.
Okay, so that's interesting. So I'm just going to explore that, because you're obviously into the mindfulness piece. And a lot of the mindfulness piece is about don't look back, don't have regrets, being present in the moment.
Yeah, definitely present in the moment. Yeah, but you can learn from your mistakes, but it doesn't mean or your failures, but it doesn't mean to say that you could have wished you'd done things differently, or didn't go down certain paths. Yeah. And, there's brilliant quotes out there. There's a brilliant book called Divorcing a Narcissist. It's got one of the best quotes in it about, going along a road and there's a pothole in the road. I don't know who quoted. Did you know who quoted this?
No.
And you decide to go right in it. And then some people go in and get out. And then other people very sensibly go round it. Yeah. I went down the pothole.
Okay.
So I did marry an abuser. Domestic abuse marriage particularly worsened after nearly dying, giving birth to my son. Okay. He's 17 now. We lived, we survived, but I was in intensive care. He was in the special care baby unit, and that was a preeclamptic fit. But after that, now domestic abuse can take many forms. It can be the emotional, psychological, which it was to me, and around me there was violence, but in the end I did call the police and social services took us away.
That takes a strength to carry, so Bev.
Yes, I did, because it does take a strength of character, but unfortunately too many people like myself ask for help when it's nearly too late.
Okay. Because they think they can cope with it and they can deal with it, and they're in control of it, or?
Who's that?
Well, When you're in that situation,
Yeah.
what stopped you asking for help earlier?
I think you maybe hope that person's going to change, or they convince you that they're going to change.
Yeah.
But actually it's a very, very unsafe, dire situation. And I think you're terrified is probably the answer. Some people aren't as fortunate as us. We're fortunate as in we're alive. I mean, some people like Rosie. Rosie was a beautiful Pilates teacher of mine. I haven't actually shared this on a podcast before, so I might get emotional.
Don't worry.
I love you, Rosie. I love you, Rosie, but I think it does need to be voiced. Rosie worked for me 5 days a week. She didn't turn up to work. And in the end, I did call the police, and 24 hours later, I found out that she'd been murdered. The crime police came to my door and told me. So sort of Rosie is one of those most shining lights in the world. And now, well, she's physically not here anymore, and there's children left behind. He then went on to kill himself. And it's not everyone's so lucky.
No. Not everybody comes through the other side of abuse, do they?
Sometimes it's too late, and Rosie, love you. And yeah, you don't understand. You don't understand.
From the outside, you don't see it happening either, do you?
No, and so it was quite a journey after that. I did stay in the business for another 4 years, but I think I've been reading your book. Your book is excellent. I've been recommending it to all my female entrepreneur friends.
Fantastic, thank you.
But I don't know what you call it in your book, when people they go into the down bit.
Yeah, they go to the valley of despair.
Okay, you call it the valley of despair.
Yeah,
I was in the valley of despair. But not just, I could keep going. And in fact, I managed to keep going, the business going. And in fact, the business financially grew.
Okay.
Which is slightly odd. But then it went down. Well, not down, but it peaked. It did peak over those sort of, interestingly, it did go up and up.
Yeah.
But my love of it in this, what you call the valley of despair, I'd fallen out of love with my business. Yeah. But not that it's all, there's a lot dark spider's web of, without going into too many details, there's a dark spider's web of that abuse, and a lot of people linked to that person that I didn't want to be associated with anymore. And as much as I love my clients, and I did love Pilates, I still do, I had through having a coach myself, it took moving to Dorset and having a coach, my sister's my coach, thanks Julie, to make friends and fall back in love with the mindfulness Pilates, but make it actually much better than it ever was, if that makes any sense at all, having that inspiration back. But I wanted to sell the business, but I didn't give it long enough because I didn't want to be there in the end.
Yeah, and sometimes in life,
I moved to Dorset, and it was actually in the way the best thing I ever did.
Sometimes you've got to
declutter.
Yeah, declutter, disconnect, whatever you want to call it, and just go, okay, I need that fresh start for me. I've got to go and find out who I am again, and off you go again, and look at the wonderful things you're doing now, Bev.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm very proud. It's been quite a roller coaster in Dorset, but it's been wonderful in so many ways.
So I'm gonna start. I mean, thank you for that honest sharing. And I'm hopefully, if people have in the same situation you were in, they may be listening to this podcast and they can find the courage to go and do something about it.
Yeah, and ask for help. Ask a professional. I mean, I started off with Parent Line. I started off with somebody I'd had therapy with to heal from the road traffic accident. She said, I'm not the right person to help you. She suggested Parent Line. Parent Line said, they're not the right person to help me. They said the domestic violence helpline. They said to call the police. So you've got to know, you've got to be very careful in your leaving as well. And because you're being watched and stuff. So you've got to call the right person. Yeah. If you haven't told your friends and family what's going on, you at least tell a professional and ask for that help, because there's always someone there to help.
Thank you, Bev. So I've got one of those really basic questions about Pilates that I'm going to have to, as we move on through the conversation, have to ask. What's the difference between Pilates and yoga?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I actually did a whole episode on that on my podcast. Yeah, so what's the difference? Yeah, good question. Have you ever tried it?
I've sort of like done online classes of both, and I can kind of see the difference, but then it's me watching a screen trying to do Pilates and trying to do yoga, and that's kind of as far as it's gone.
Yeah. So Pilates, as I said, was developed by the late Joseph Pilates, and I think one of the big differences is that Pilates has both mat work and equipment. So Joseph Pilates designed all this equipment as well. Called reformers, called Cadillacs. So like the reformers, like this, it looks like a. So that's a very big difference. Yoga is always mat work.
Yeah, mat work using your body and your body's strength. And
yoga is mind, body, and spirit, and Pilates is very much just mind and body. Although who knows with what people think with me teaching a very inspired, sparkly style, deeply spiritual person. However, yoga is mind, body, spirit. Pilates is very much mind body. It's an exercise.
Okay.
Very much for mind and body. So Joseph Pilates on the equipment side, he had these it looks like a bit like a torture chamber, to be honest. It's like the reformer, for example. I had 11 of them at one point, and rehab reformers and stuff. And they look like sort of giant rowing machines, except it's kind of a mat that moves with springs and pulleys. If you're working with very light springs, that actually works more on your core stability and your sort of more inner strength. So it isn't about like at the gym where somebody might be trying to constantly build up to bigger weights or whatever. And there's a whole massive repertoire of exercises on like just the reformer, and different ways of doing the mat work exercise. So for example, the first exercise of the sort of classical traditional mat work Joseph Pilates style is the 100, and the 100 you do it 100 times. I won't start lying on the floor here. I better stay. I'm tempted to
I was a bit scared you were going to ask me to do it.
I'm tempted to lie down, but I've got a microphone in front of me. Anyway, so I'm so used to doing Pilates and exercises, but you know, it's a warm up exercise.
You're
doing 100 in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's loads of levels. It's dynamic. It's about warming the body up, and you obviously I teach from beginners right up to advanced with it. But on the reformer, you're doing that with springs and pulleys. So you're pressing the handles down, the springs are pulling down, and it helps you. It's a really lovely way of connecting into the abdominals. You've got loads of different bits of equipment, so that's quite a big difference.
So, but the big difference between the two is this kind of yoga is mind, body, spirit. Pilates is mind and body.
Yeah, that's
and
one of them.
Kind of exercise.
And one mat work, one equipment, and Pilates is often more recognised by doctors, physiotherapists, osteopaths, chiropractors on the whole, because I think particularly with physiotherapy, because it's Pilates, I would say, this is only my opinion, is safer if somebody's had an injury, an ache, pain and injury. It's a lot straighter, more aligned, as in a more sort of stable way. So but then saying that, if somebody's had a prolapsed disc, you need to avoid all the advanced stuff and all the extreme bending stuff. So I think from that point of view, it's very good for rehabilitation as well. But equally, you have athletes. I mean, I've even taught in England rugby, football player, and rugby and football players, and so many more people are, using it these days.
And if I was to ask, for somebody that doesn't do Pilates now, what are the top? This is one of those two probably simplification questions, but what would be the top 3 benefits of undertaking Pilates on a regular basis?
Very much, I would say, core stability. So for the deep abdominals, it's incredible. So it's a great support. I think it's the best exercise to do alongside any other cardiovascular exercise. I think, it gives you good support. Back strength is incredible with Pilates. And you need the right stretches for whatever you're needing it for. So if it's, after having aches and pains in the back, then, you can have very complementary ones, that are complementary to sort of physio type stretches. So, but the way I teach it, I would say the icing on the cake is very much the de-stress side of it. So the mindfulness Pilates is the style I teach. So you've got the relaxation, the breathing, the meditation, the positive affirmations, the mindset. the power pose in it, you've got 1 minute journaling in it, you've got goal setting in it, you've got visualization in it, you've got visualization of your goals whilst you're doing stretches. So it's kind of, I suppose I wanted to create it as a whole personal development experience as well, but then they're getting all the Pilates and the strength that they want from it, but adding all these other, infusing all these other things into it, which makes it as a teacher inspirational, much more interesting. And some people, they would want one of my amazing, beautiful female entrepreneurs being at class yesterday if I don't do all those extra stuff, all those things. No, she just, it's like, there's loads of Pilates out there these days. She doesn't want bog standard, which is very, very good Pilates. She doesn't want bog standard. She wants something that's going to help. She wants, but that then helps her in her business. That helps her in her business as well. I can say her name. She's been on my podcast. Sarah. She's a stylist and a networking, amazing person. So, she wouldn't come along.
No, if it wasn't for the other stuff and that kind of mindfulness piece and those kind of things.
Yeah, the mindfulness with it,
And the affirmation's quite an interesting thing and something clearly you believe in. You've created these affirmation cards, both for adults and for children. So how did the cards come about, Bev? And tell our listeners a little bit about what the cards and what they do. Yes,
well, the card, I gave a sigh then because you said also how did they come about. So the cards are incredible. The reason I sighed was because I created the children's cards first. They're called Happy Kids cards, and they're to bring more happiness, confidence and calm to children's lives, very much for mental health and well-being. I'm just passing a deck over to Warren. They come in this lovely cotton bag, and I originally designed them for primary school children, and they're a 52 card deck, and they come with how to use the cards and 10 fun ways of when and how to use the cards. You give them a shuffle and you pick a card out, and then you have a talk about what it means to you, and everybody has a turn. So if you're doing it with your child or children, then everybody has a turn, and you can make up your own ways of using them as well. There's loads of ways of using them. And they are absolutely incredible to use during good, challenging, sad times of life. Obviously for the little ones, they need help with the reading of them, those little 4-year-olds and everything. But it's very, very fun. I taught with them in primary schools here for a few years, and it was fascinating teaching all the age groups. But my son was also pivotal in helping me. I wasn't saying to him, "Oh, will you help me write these cards?" It's just things he'd come out with at bedtime when he was primary school age, and I was like, "Wow, that is absolute gold, and that will help not just children. That's not just for their childhood, but this will set them up for their whole, life actually." But the reason I did sigh was when I created them, quite a bad health problem had happened, and what had happened, I had to take a few months off work. Half of my vocal cords had actually paralysed.
Oh my Lord.
And I had this large growth on my thyroid, and so I thought I was going to have another operation. And the inspiration came in to write these, and I wrote these cards, and I was determined to heal myself. Okay. I wrote these cards lying in bed, as you do, not very well, feeling really negative, feeling very sorry for myself. Okay. The positivity mindset was not there at all.
Right, okay. But anyway, that mind over matter mindset was there to heal yourself.
Yes, I suppose. Yes, I wanted to heal this physical dis-ease that was going on, and they're like, God, they're checking me for cancer, whatever, all sorts. They were surprised it wasn't far worse. And anyway, I wrote these cards, and I went back for my next, camera to look at what's going on, and it's all the vocal cords are just healed. Anyway, who knows what happened exactly there, but all I can say is I think, for me personally, these are a tool, if used early, I believe, give you a voice, help you express how you feel. They're incredible for well-being and mental health. And also, I was a really shy, unconfident, sensitive child who did not know how to ask for help. Now, I do believe that bullying, including nasty, abusive marriages, for example, could be prevented or nipped in, or just not happen if that child learns better skills from a young age. So
and when you look at those cards, and I've been flicking through them as we've been talking, you can see the discussions that would open up just by using those cards. And it's a tool to do that, isn't it?
Yes, and the idea is, what does that mean to you? Because sometimes you'll pick a card. I know, carve the podcast. I stretch every day. Okay, well, I do. So that's maybe not the best example. I'm going to go for another one. I am creative. Getting lots of fresh air, walks and exercise makes me more fun and creative. But there might be a card that you pick, and that's a reading one, that is the absolute opposite to how you're feeling. That one's telling us to have a lie down. Not yet. Oh gosh, learning from mistakes. But for example, I am enthusiastic and full of energy, and you're not feeling at all enthusiastic and full of energy, or you've not had enough sleep last night. So what I did with my second deck, which came out on Valentine's Day this year, Happy and Calm cards, these ones are for us adults, but also I have quite a few wishes and goals with these cards, but to take it to, so these are an extension of the first deck with many more layers to it, including how to journal with them, and how can you feel more like that. So if you're not feeling like that, how can you feel more like that? What action steps are you going to take to feel more like that? And it brings up incredible conversations. Would you like me to pick you one today?
Go on, pick me.
You're going to pick one.
I'm going to pick a card.
Warren is picking a card.
I sleep well. I love going to bed and getting lots of sleep for me.
What does that mean to you today?
I actually did sleep well last night, but importance of sleep is really, and don't always sleep well. Can quite, go to sleep and then wake up with a very busy mind and don't feel refreshed the days when that happens.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and then everybody has a turn. Mine is be yourself, and that's exactly what I decided.
You're definitely being that today, aren't you?
That was my goal on the podcast today.
Okay.
Be myself.
There you are. So brilliant. So you've developed the cards. You obviously introduce a lot of this positive affirmation, and that kind of visualization within your classes, making them, I'm going to say more wholesome, but that's possibly the wrong
holistic.
Term. Holistic would be the word, wouldn't it? But you're also, somebody that clearly believes in meditation and meditating as well. So again, a lot of business owners have seen the benefits of meditation, but perhaps struggle to know where to start.
Yeah.
So any tips on where perhaps somebody listening to this that wants to start meditating, what should they do?
I think the great thing is that meditation is actually a word that is accepted these days because it's recommended by doctors. Mindfulness meditation recommended by doctors for physical and mental health. A lot of people out there, they're doing it now. It's great that it's a mainstream word, but for my first 16 years, I did not use that word. It was too out there.
Okay,
yeah,
really?
Too out there.
So it's interesting to see how the word...
I would use the word at the time for the first 16 years, relaxation, breathing.
Okay.
But
breathwork, meditation, it's part of everyday terminology in life and acceptance, isn't it?
And I think it's when you've got a bit of research behind it, something, and then the doctors are recommending it, then it gets a bit more kudos. But anyway, how to get started is literally at your desk, sit with good posture, bottom at the back of the chair, feet hip width apart, relax your shoulders, close your eyes, and simply breathe in and out, the number 10 relaxation meditation, and take 10 breaths in and out. Just breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, relax, and do that another 9 times. And that just gets you started. You can do that sitting, standing, or lying down. But that's just a great way to get started. And, I'm teaching more and more lawyers and corporate with working through stress to calm work. And I literally teach them. I've taken the main the Pilates out of it, apart from desk stretching, nice neck stretches and neck stretches and neck stretches and shoulder circles. But bringing it practically into the office, at the desk, on Zoom, at my Zoom studio, and everyone, all the lawyers and their team and companies can just Zoom in from wherever they are for 30 minutes or their initial 45-minute hour workshop. But the best thing is regular classes because it's like brushing your teeth. You have to keep using the tools.
And I think that's, if I'm being really honest, I find these tools and I discover them, breath work, cold showers, occasionally the kind of meditation, and stretching, Pilates, yoga, but I struggle to sustain them.
Yeah, I think the best thing with sustaining these things is to have a teacher.
Okay. It's the same as anything. Have a coach, teacher.
Yeah, having a coach, having a teacher, you show up. You know, why did I go to that sauna on the beach yesterday? I paid for it and I turned up. But I think having a teacher, my job is to empower and motivate people with the tools and for them to do it properly and to be 100% there in the zone doing those tools for that 30 minutes. And then my job is then to self-empower that person and motivate them to practice every day. Because as we know, practice makes improvement. But by using these tools, sort of working through stress to calm tools, meditation, relaxation is just one of those 7 1-minute tools. That is what makes a huge difference, having a morning routine. But a lot of people think, oh God, I've got to do half an hour. I've got so, I've got to get the kids ready, got to get them out of the house, got to get to a meeting. So I recommend, like with all the lawyers I teach, corporate I teach, 7-minute morning routine.
Okay.
7 minutes.
Yeah.
Then I recommend when you're at work if you either want to turn up with peak performance. I turned up here 6 minutes early today. I parked my bike and I wanted to come into this interview with peak performance to be in my best state, even though I did my morning routine this morning. So I went off and just walked along the road, and there I was doing calm to happy in 1 minute, taking 5 breaths. I wasn't standing like that, actually. I was just taking 5 breaths behind a tree. And then I was doing 10 punches in the air, high power pose, which brings more happiness. I'm punching my arms in the air at the moment.
Yeah. This should have been a visual one. We should have recorded this one.
I was just video. on the path on the road, doing 10 punches, saying, well done, well done, well done, well done. And that is calm to happy in 1 minute. But that's also a 1 minute tool that somebody can use before either they've got low confidence before important presentation, they've got low confidence or imposter syndrome before an important interview, or it could be a very, very stressful court hearing that a lawyer's about to go into. Now, what excites me is I'm now inspiring lawyers and motivating them to teach their clients because their clients are not, like I was, very weak going into court, very weak and battered internally.
Fatigued through it all,
and I was not that strong, confident, empowered woman I am now going into the courtroom in the past. So I'm now empowering the family lawyers to teach their clients. One said to me, I was so excited 2 weeks ago. This is a very new thing. She said, I'm going to teach the client who's really weak, going through a really abusive, nasty court, process at the moment. I'm going to teach that to her before we go into the hearing. Yeah. And I'm like, yes. I do teach, individuals and families these things as well. Obviously, if they book in with me, even better. But for me to know that I'm inspiring the lawyer to do that with their clients, so it is a positive.
Cascading down.
Yeah, and then when I was out on the road, another minute before I came in early, I was doing power pose. I was doing hands on hips. I was doing desk stretches. So high power pose. There's research that shows by doing hands on hips, good posture, sitting, standing, hands at the side of the neck, like a winner running a runner winning across the finishing line. You can recreate that for your business. So I was doing that as well. I was like, I just want to run a race before coming in. And then, Amy Cuddy, psychologist, has a brilliant TED talk on that of how your body language can change your life. So I'll find another bit of research and how can I bring that in to make it more interesting for the lawyers and corporate and my clients.
And so where do you see yourself with all of this that's going on in, say, 5 years' time? Because you have been on this journey, but you've been on a personal journey, but listening to you now, you've been on a whole journey with Pilates and how you deploy it and how you use it for the benefit of your clients. So where would you see yourself or hope to see yourself in 5 years' time, Bev?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. 5 years' time, I would love to have the strong financial foundations again. Yeah. Strong financial foundations is very, very important.
Makes us feel secure, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that's very important. That's very, very important. I'd love a home right on the beach, mortgage free.
Just your visualization.
With a dog, with a lovely dog, and maybe I'll have met my soulmate, or maybe it'll just be the dog, who knows. I would love in the work there to the next book a stress reduction book to come out to really. So I'm not just helping a niche of lawyers and corporate with that, or those going through the stressful divorce. I would like a book that can, because I'm typically getting a 40 to 75% reduction in stress with the 7 1-minute tools from working with a law firm, for example. That's last week's results. So I know that the more people that get to know that, the more they want to book in, the more I can help them. And then the more they help, that will also help my little family. But that will also give them money to invest in apps and things like that. And I would love every child, my goals, I would love every child to have a set of Happy Kids cards on their first day of primary school is a goal. I would love every secondary school child to have a set on year 7 on their first day of secondary school. I would love every foster child, every foster parent, everyone who works with children to be using these, every school, every teacher, every nursery as well, actually, and every social worker. But I've got a lot of goals, and I'd love my lawyer work to be fully booked, and my mindfulness Pilates online Zoom studio to be fully booked, and having extra time and space that I can design more things to help people. Because I am a designer, for well-being, And
is your motivation helping people, do you think? In the core now of what you are and what you do?
Yeah. My sort of core values are family, well-being, that's mental health and physical health, and making a difference. So, and I love designing things that are going to help people with that. But I need to then, of course, teach and inspire the use of those tools in the teaching.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And you've got a couple of books there. I was just going to ask again.
Oh, no, these aren't my books. I didn't bring my book today, actually.
Okay, but what I was actually going to ask was, again...
I do have 2 books.
I love, one of the things I think is great, hopefully, about this podcast, it gives listeners as kind of that first, we've asked a couple of those questions today, what's the first steps? But if people want to learn more about mindfulness and, journaling, meditating, the benefits, is there any books, be they yours or others, that you would recommend that people pick up and read?
So, my next book.
The next book. That's not there today.
It's in my head. The books I brought with me today, I like showing these particular books. This one's by a doctor called Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, Happy Mind, Happy Life. This is a science-backed guide to a calmer, happier you. What I love about these type of books is that, it's got about the benefits of journaling in there.
Yeah.
I've got a whole longer list of the benefits I see with journaling. I think this is my favourite sciencey person, Dr. David Hamilton. This particular book is a very good one as well. He's got loads. He's got great sense of humour as well. How your mind can heal your body. So it's got kind of all the science sort of benefits behind visualisation, like why you would use mental rehearsal, visualization. You can use it in business. It's used a lot. I learnt it in sports science, in sports psychology. It's used
all those years ago.
Yes, it was. That's when I learnt it. All those years ago, whenever that was, 92 to 95, 1995, and sports. Sportsmen and women people are using it all the time. For Tom Daley, before he dives off his board, he's doing his 10 breaths, he's doing his relaxation, meditation, whatever he wants to call it, and then he's visualizing his his dive, and that's. But you can use it for your personal life as well, which is very exciting. My book, I Talk to Angels, is a brilliant self-help book if you have a more spiritual side to you, but it's got tons of meditations, mindfulness, even mindful colouring in there. It's got journaling in there. It's got a lot of affirmations, meditations, mindfulness in my book.
Okay.
I Talk to Angels. And it's also a book that you can just pick up and I'll just pick a page, choose any old page, or intuitively pick a page, and you'll get a tip of the day. So it is my personal go-to book for a tip of the day.
Okay.
You just sort of
and that's available on Amazon?
Yes, on Amazon, Waterstones, any good bookshop. I was so proud when it went in Amazon. Not Amazon.
Waterstones.
Waterstones.
That is an amazing feeling.
Yes, seeing an actual bookshop is beautiful. So you can either do Amazon or any beautiful bookshop. You can either get it in or order it there.
Great.
And
So as we wrap our conversation, I've loved this conversation. It's going to be one of those that I'm going to be reflecting on all day over the weekend, I am sure. I always end with the same question, so I'm going to have to ask it of you, Bev, is what does success, personal success, mean to you?
Personal success.
Yeah.
Number one is my son Sammy. He's 17 now. So number one, my values I mentioned are personal and work values are exactly the same. They're identical.
Perfect.
Which is interesting. I found that very interesting to discover that. So family, my son is my number one priority, and I just do anything for that boy. So he's absolutely number one. So success is, I think how I used to think of success is differently to how I think of success now. And I think of success of having the lifestyle that you want as well. So living by the sea in a beautiful place and being able to plunge in that cold sea yesterday to me is quite a fun thing to do, and walks on the beach, and just having a really lovely, morning routine, starting your day really well in that way that's inspiring for you. And I'll be off to a Japanese garden later to journal and sit there with a lovely cappuccino and piece of cake.
Yeah.
I'm healthy most of the time, but you can have treats, can't you?
Absolutely.
And I would say you're talking about personal success, not work success.
Yeah.
But within that, you do have to have strong financial foundations, because that does allow you less stress and
that basic needs
more
of security,
opportunities. So within that, I do think that is important too.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bev. It's brilliant to have had you on the podcast. If people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
It's Beverley Densham everywhere, so it's beverleydensham.com is the website, and whether it's LinkedIn or the other social media, it's Beverley Densham as well, but you can call me Bev.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you, as I say, for being a great guest on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.